How long can a person tolerate a toxic relationship? Endure betrayal, humiliation? Everyone has their own red line after crossing which there will be no way back. Listen to this story and share your impressions. Hello friends, listen to my story. Perhaps this can be the nudge you need to leave a harmful situation and claim the happiness you deserve. My childhood was spent on a sprawling 26-acre horse farm in rural Ohio. I was always a solitary child, preferring the company of books to people. Unfortunately, my parents divorced when I was young, and I lived with my mother while seeing my father every other weekend. This experience certainly had an impact on my upbringing. Primarily due to the lack of a healthy male role model, I struggled to understand what a healthy relationship looked like. My father's limited presence in my life meant that I didn't have much time with him to learn about it. Meanwhile, my mother had many boyfriends, some of whom treated me and my brother badly. I vividly recall being backhanded across a room at the tender age of 10 by one of them. Another one, while setting glue traps for the mice in the garage, made us watch as he cut them off the traps, a cruel and inhumane act that left a lasting impression on me. He would cut off all their legs and throw the still living legless mouse in the trash can. He was a true tyrant. I quickly learned to keep quiet and behave kindly, as any other behavior would result in punishment, usually physical. This caused me to adopt an unhealthy mindset of enduring mistreatment without addressing it. I don't have any problems with this approach, and if someone treats me poorly, I simply accept it. I used to retreat into my own world with books whenever I had the chance. I was an avid reader and had amassed a collection of over 1,000 books which filled 5 double-stacked bookshelves in my bedroom. During the winter, once all my chores were done, I would spend hours in there, lost in my books. Whenever the weather permitted, I would carry my books outside and read in the forest or out in the hayfield. And I even spent a lot of time in the old cemetery across our field. Although it was a beautiful escape, in retrospect, it may not have been the healthiest lifestyle. Apologies for the lengthy backstory, but after some therapy, I've come to understand that my upbringing left me vulnerable to remaining in an abusive relationship. My issues and coping mechanisms made me tolerate unacceptable behavior from others. I first met Elle in my mid-teens, during a church lock-in that neither of us wanted to attend, and we hit it off immediately. She was one of those quirky girls from the mid-2000s, writing strange poetry and shouting, "Spork." She had all the typical attributes that were considered attractive at the time, complete with curly hair. One day, she approached me and challenged me to an air hockey game, and you can guess how that turned out. We became an exclusive couple for the next 7 years, finishing high school together and attending the same college with the same scholarship to the local state college. Although we had our fair share of ups and downs, I chalked it up to the natural ebb and flow of relationships. She was unpredictable and attempted to distance me from my limited circle of friends, claiming they envied her for monopolizing my attention. She would weep over trivial matters, lash out at me for issues that were not my fault, and incessantly demand affection. She craved constant affirmation from those in her vicinity and was not afraid to seek it out. Despite enduring these behaviors, I tolerated them, as she was my inaugural serious relationship. She had a knack for downplaying her negative actions as my own misunderstanding. I believed she was acting irrationally, but I endured it to return to our regular routine. During college, her problematic tendencies became more apparent. Shortly after her arrival, she frequently spent time with other male students in our honors dorm. Despite asking if everything was okay, she assured me that it was. Yet, I would later discover her sitting on a guy's lap in his room that same evening. On numerous occasions, I witnessed her engaging in inappropriate behavior with guys, including making out with strangers. After confronting her about my observations and threatening to end our relationship if she didn't come clean, she confessed to performing oral intimacy on another guy. She went into explicit detail about the encounter and revealed that she was infatuated with him because, in her words, he resembled the guy from Napoleon Dynamite and was incredibly attractive. Admittedly, I should have terminated our relationship solely based on that remark. We'd been together for almost 5 years, so I believed we could mend our relationship. I confronted the guy involved, and she severed all ties with him, which resulted in a temporary improvement in our situation. During my junior year of college, I landed a decent job with a construction company in the area and managed to save enough money in 6 months to make a down payment on a house. This occurred in 2008, in an older steel town where housing prices had plummeted. After consulting with Elle, we agreed to purchase a home in close proximity to our school and begin our journey together. We became engaged shortly after moving in while completing our studies. I believed that by relocating her from the co-ed dorm, her infidelity problems would be resolved, and it appeared to work, at least temporarily. Overall, things were looking up, and we experienced a period of bliss. She secured a job selling books and eventually pursued a graduate degree. In fact, she attempted to pursue 4 different graduate degrees, but abandoned them due to a lack of interest. I covered the expenses for the ones she was unable to obtain scholarships or student loans for, and I supported her choices wholeheartedly. We welcomed a dog and some cats into our home, and I continued to labor for a construction company under a despised supervisor, but it paid the bills. We exchanged vows in 2010 at the age of 23. My advice to young people is to avoid getting married too soon. You have yet to experience what constitutes a healthy relationship. I mean, it was exactly what I imagined as a great life. I rose early, bestowed a kiss upon her, and departed for work, where I was occasionally chastised for failing to comprehend my boss's thoughts. My responsibilities included drafting, job takeoffs, and assisting with various tasks on the job site, since it was a small enterprise, and everyone wore multiple hats. Following a long day, I would return home, release the dog, and listen to Elle recount her day. Whenever I expressed dissatisfaction about my day, I was admonished for not being masculine enough and contributing to her stress levels. I would proceed to cook dinner or mow the lawn, and the cycle would repeat. I believed this was entirely typical, if not above average. Things began to unravel, and I was unaware of it for some time. When Al secured a job with a nearby energy firm as a mapper, she began earning more than the minimum wage. After only a few months, her supervisor's supervisor recognized her potential. It wasn't long before she landed a job as a process assistant in a big city close by, after only 4 months. The commute was 2 hours, but I'm unclear on the specifics. During this same period, she became romantically involved with her boss, which eventually turned physical. I am still unsure how to feel about the situation, given that he was 30 years older than her, had recently separated from his wife, and was living in his mother's basement. I observed that she was distancing herself more than usual from our relationship, but I attributed it to the pressure of her demanding corporate job and the long commute. Despite my efforts to show her more attention and shower her with gifts, nothing seemed to make a difference. I assumed that she would eventually adjust to her job, and our relationship would return to its previous state. In January 2013, we relocated to Cleveland to shorten her commute. I also landed a superior job, and we secured a fantastic living space at a below-market price. Suddenly, our relationship got better, and everything was fine. It was true that she had to work late frequently, but that was just part of the corporate world. She had earned a salary increase due to her exceptional performance, which was fantastic news. Meanwhile, I was forging new connections with colleagues and slowly beginning to break out of my shell. She began frequently going out with her colleagues from work and often returned home late, completely intoxicated. This behavior caused numerous arguments between us, and our relationship began to deteriorate further. Eventually, we reached a state of equilibrium where we rarely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was only about the most mundane topics. In December 2014, we visited her parents in Texas, and the trip proved to be a great one. It seemed to reignite some of the emotions that we had lost. The trip to Texas served as a wake-up call for me. as it made me realize that our relationship was more troubled than I had initially thought. After returning home, I had an honest conversation with Elle, expressing my desire to maintain the level of engagement we had during the trip. I had an epiphany that we could improve our relationship, and I asked for her help in doing so. She reacted by screaming, looking at me with frightened eyes, stuttering, and then bolting down to the basement. I followed her and thought how my words could cause such a strong reaction. Suddenly, she turned on me and accused me of trapping her in the basement. I immediately backed away, but she continued, sobbing as she declared that she didn't deserve to be loved. Despite my attempts to get an explanation, she remained silent, and we eventually retreated to our own rooms to cool off. The following day, I broached the subject again, only to be met with a stern warning that she denied any such incident had occurred and that she would leave if I persisted. She flatly denied having a meltdown about us meeting up the day before. I became suspicious, but I didn't initially consider it cheating. Instead, I thought she was just feeling insecure. She had always struggled with insecurity, but never to the extent of having a complete breakdown. After this incident, I concluded that my younger self was right. It was better to have a roommate who was occasionally amusing and occasionally intimate. Due to witnessing my mother's post-divorce struggles, I developed a bias against divorce. Therefore, I resolved to make my relationship work by any means possible. Despite her frequent nights out, drinking, and unpredictable outbursts, I opted to keep my emotions to myself unless she inquired. In the meantime, I focused on self-improvement to become a more attractive and desirable husband. I started working on my own personal gym and pursuing physical activities like backpacking and woodworking, interests that had always fascinated me, but were put on hold due to lack of time. During this phase, Elle expressed her unhappiness with my lack of hobbies and perceived dullness. Her criticism prompted me to take action, and I believed that developing my skills and passions could help fix our relationship issues. Thankfully, this experience turned out to be a positive one, as I am now in great physical form and have made significant progress in my woodworking and turning skills. D-Day came in April 2015. My wife came home extremely intoxicated after a night out with friends. I'm still unsure how she managed to make it back home. She vomited several times while I held her hair, and eventually passed out on the floor next to the toilet. Her breathing was erratic, and I feared she might stop breathing altogether. Although I considered calling an ambulance, I decided to wait and monitor her for a while. As she lay on the floor, her phone repeatedly buzzed with text notifications, which I initially disregarded. Eventually, I assumed it might be someone checking on her safety, so I unlocked her phone using her thumbprint and responded. I was shocked to discover that the messages were from her boss, and the final one read something like, "We can't continue doing this in the office or we'll be caught." It dawned on me right away what was going on, and I couldn't believe how foolish I had been for not realizing it sooner. Even after 2 to 3 years, I felt incredibly dense. We were young, but that doesn't justify my ignorance and detachment from our marriage. I had always assumed that our relationship had simply grown apart, but I never once considered cheating on her, and I had assumed that she felt the same. I began scrolling through her text messages with him and discovered that this had been going on for some time. It wasn't clear when their relationship had crossed the line from a professional one to an inappropriate one, and I couldn't determine when the physical aspect began. I did come across a message from that same night, where they exchanged pictures of her chest taken at the bar they were at. They also discussed meeting up again in just a week or so. I resolved that if I disclosed anything to her then, she would twist it to make it seem like I was prying and misunderstanding or misrecalling what I had perused, given my poor memory. In retrospect, it appears that she was trying to manipulate me by gaslighting in order to hide her own wrongdoings. Rather than confronting her, I purchased a voice recorder and spent several days locating a discreet spot in her vehicle before work to test its recording duration. Before the meetup, I made sure to locate the place where they planned to gather. On the day before, my wife informed me that she had work in a neighboring town and would be returning home late. Although I was anxious, I told her to take her time without raising. As time passed, I kept my composure and waited until around 6 in the evening to drive near the bar where they were supposed to meet. I saw them where I expected. I witnessed both of them in her car, engaging in physical intimacy and passionately kissing each other. I couldn't bear the sight of it, so I drove away and headed home where I had a few shots and cried. Later that night, she returned home and I didn't confront her about what I had seen. Instead, I prepared dinner for us and acted like everything was normal. Once she went to bed, I retrieved the voice recorder and listened to the conversation, where she pleaded to return to their office to have intimacy, among other things. I was at a loss for how to respond. Her behavior was uncharacteristic of her usual self, and she seemed almost unhinged in her desire for him. Despite my reservations, I listened to the entire conversation before waking her up and insisting we talk. I asked her directly if she was cheating, and she vehemently denied it. When I inquired about the name of the bar where she was meeting him, she acted as if she had no idea what I was talking about. It was then that I revealed I had been there earlier that day and witnessed some concerning behavior. She immediately questioned if I had followed her. "Tell me, did you install a tracker in my car? If so, I may have a panic attack if you track me again without my knowledge." I confronted her about reading her texts from a few weeks ago and going to the bar where she claimed to be meeting her boss, S. She denied the existence of those texts, perhaps thinking that it would negate my discovery. It's insane to think about. Eventually, she admitted to seeing S. They had been seeing each other a few times, and when I asked her to stop, she threatened to stop loving me. My lack of self-confidence and aversion to forcing anything made me believe that staying with someone to split bills was better than being alone. For a few months, that was the extent of our relationship. She would still meet up with him, and I would try to convince her otherwise. There were moments of craziness, as I had other girlfriends, and Elle knew about them and became jealous. On a particular occasion, she returned home in tears and confided in me that she suspected S was ending their relationship for another person. I didn't react emotionally. Instead, I felt a sense of ironic amusement and rolled my eyes. Despite this, I remained in her life even as she continued to see S. During this time, she also engaged in one-night stands with various men, and while I discovered a few of them, I suspect there were more. After struggling with panic attacks, I reached a breaking point and realized that I had developed a panic disorder. At that moment, I knew that it was time to take action and make a change. I handed her a dictaphone and made it clear that she needed to end the conversation with the letter C and record the evidence on the dictaphone. Although she cried initially, she eventually agreed and followed through with my request the next day. When S found out, he immediately panicked, and I witnessed the texts coming in on Elle's new Apple Watch, which, she wasn't aware, didn't delete messages removed from the phone. After the initial chaos, things calmed down, and we attended a marriage counseling session. In order for my wife to agree to attend a counseling session, I made a deal to keep her infidelity a secret from the counselor. However, during the session, the counselor criticized me for wanting to check my wife's phone and know her whereabouts, which I only did after discovering her cheating. We never returned to that counselor again. Despite this, we remained together, but every so often, I would uncover new instances of infidelity. One time, while under the influence of alcohol, she performed oral intimacy on a coworker in a bathroom. During a business trip out of state, my wife began texting a man, and their conversation took a strange turn. A significant portion of his messages revolved around his grandmother wiping his butt until he was in his mid-teens, and how he enjoyed it. I grew accustomed to spending my time browsing paint colors. It almost became a routine for us, where she would discover how I found out about her affairs, promise to end things with the person in question, and take measures like disconnecting her Apple Watch or avoiding the use of her car. And so it went on. In hindsight, I realized that I had grown accustomed to the situation and had emotionally detached myself from the relationship. Ironically, we would argue about my lack of investment in the relationship during this time. However, things took a turn when I received an unexpected message from one of my wife's co-workers' spouses. She had caught her husband and my wife exchanging text messages and snaps and sent me screenshots as proof. The screenshots were a wake-up call for me. They made me realize that my wife's behavior wasn't just a mistake or a one-time occurrence. I understand that it may seem foolish, but when you're in a relationship, excusing one action can make it easier to excuse the next. I had reached a point where I was excusing everything. Our fights became a ritual. She would end the affair, and a few months later the cycle would start anew. The screenshots revealed that the person my wife was involved with, NL, was saying things like, "I should have done you the first time I saw you." After discovering the texts and arranging to meet with NL, I confronted my wife, L, about her affair. Her initial reaction was annoyance that NL hadn't done a better job of hiding it from his wife. This response shocked me, and it was clear that she was devastated when I spoke with NL. He had 2 children, and his actions were likely going to tear his family apart. Meanwhile, my wife was angry that he wasn't skilled enough to maintain the affair without getting caught. She even sent me some texts later on expressing her opinion. When the affair was exposed, wife told lover that there was a code of conduct for individuals engaging in infidelity, and he had failed to follow it. These words brought me out of my dream state, and I felt as if I had finally woken up after 6 years of affairs and a decade of general mistreatment of me. I moved into the finished section of the basement, slept on an air mattress near my gym, and began drafting separation papers. I reasoned that if the separation didn't work out, I could always bring in a lawyer and file for a divorce. I decided to completely cut off communication with L and became completely unresponsive, even though we were still living in the same house. L attempted to win me back in her own peculiar way by showering me with affection. One day, I arrived home from work to find a lamp that she had purchased for the basement, placed next to my air mattress. It was probably the kindest thing she had ever done for me, but I remained emotionally distant. A few days later, she was working from home in the afternoon and didn't hear me enter the kitchen to get a drink. As I sat there preparing the dissolution in the same house, I could hear that she was on speakerphone while lounging on the couch. It was S, her boss and the man all of this had started with. I overheard him inquire if she was by herself, and without hesitation, she answered in the affirmative. In that moment, I couldn't help but think to myself, seriously, now while we're still residing under the same roof, she's going to entertain this guy. I quietly approached and eavesdropped on their conversation. He mentioned that he had never engaged in car intimacy, and specifically mentioned the idea of doing it in an automated car wash. Just then, I suddenly walked into the room and positioned myself behind wife on the couch, shouting out a greeting. Startled, wife nearly fell off the couch, while the guy hung up the phone immediately. I chuckled to myself as I went to grab my shoes. Wife called out, admonishing me for my rudeness, but I laughed again and grabbed my coat. When questioned about where I was going, I simply replied, out. In what must have been my clear and direct communication, she finally seemed to comprehend that our relationship was over. Any lingering doubts were laid to rest as I began the process of tying up loose ends. But as I made my way towards the door, she suddenly appeared, blocking my path. Despite several attempts to persuade her to move, she simply smiled a strange, almost unnerving smile. It was as if she viewed this situation more like a game, wherein preventing me from leaving would somehow keep us together in marriage. Her image remains etched in my memory to this day. It appeared as though she believed that physically blocking the door would somehow prevent me from leaving, but her plan was doomed to fail. As I grabbed her by the shoulders and lifted her up, moving her off the ground and to the side of the door, I gently lowered her back down. In no uncertain terms, I warned her not to try to keep me there or face the consequences. Any anger I had suppressed throughout my life was still very present, but I refused to resort to violence. To this day, I have never laid a violent hand on her. I ended up driving to a nearby bar that I enjoy and spent time with some friends that I've made over the past few years. I sent a text message to Elle, letting her know that I was aware of her upcoming work trip and that upon her return, she would not be welcome back in the house. Fortunately, she never did return, as she moved in with a man who she had been previously seen with, and both of them resided in his brother's dining room due to the man's unemployment and cohabitation with his brother. After that, I only crossed paths with her a handful of times. She conveniently approved the paperwork that I sent her with almost no alterations. To prevent any difficulty from her end, I threw a veiled threat that I would expose the relationship she had with her boss, which would result in both of them being fired if she didn't cooperate with me. Ultimately, it helped me get a house, a car, and a little less than half of a huge credit card debt that exceeded $20,000. Luckily, my retirement accounts remained unscathed. I considered this an immense relief. In December 2019, she returned to Ohio to sign some paperwork and was accompanied by her new partner. The encounter was as uncomfortable as one would expect, given the circumstances. Her new partner seemed to hold me responsible for the divorce, claiming that I had been abusive towards her. He was present as a precaution in case I acted violently again. He didn't seem to know that I had never raised a hand against her, even when she was cruel to me. When she got physical, I simply restrained her by holding her arms until she calmed down. I refrained from revealing to him that she had been unfaithful since I had a strong suspicion that he was one of the men with whom she had cheated. It was quite likely that he already knew about it. Another instance was when she returned to gather her belongings that were still at our shared house, and I observed her packing. This was a few months after our separation. During this visit, they informed me that she had moved into a new apartment, and her new boyfriend had moved in with her without asking permission. He found out about it when he was helping her with the move and accidentally put an urn with his father's ashes on her desk. She looked at me with a desperate expression, but all I could do was laugh. Following the divorce, I didn't have any contact with her. Within a week of the divorce, I was approached by a girl at a concert and managed to get her number. It happened again at a local event shortly after. During the month, I actively dated several girls, and all of them were superior to my ex-wife in every way. My friend teaches me, saying that I am in demand among girls. I was just thrilled to be happy for the first time in a long time, and it made it simple to attract others. Although I did have a few girlfriends, I eventually slowed down on dating. I intensified my workout routine and even hiked the Cordillera Blanca mountains in Peru. Unfortunately, the pandemic almost stranded me there. Additionally, I took a 23andMe test and delved into my ancestry, discovering a strange utopian community that was established by a man who shares my surname. Although most of the buildings are now of historical significance, Elle continued to reach out to me over the past few years, often for trivial reasons. I believe that she is simply attempting to maintain some sort of connection with me. I chose to ignore her attempts. Have heard some amusing stories, such as how her new partner began to pretend to propose to her multiple times a week, causing her to become anxious. On one occasion, she even texted me, complaining about how difficult taxes were as a single person and how she was considering getting married solely for tax purposes. When she learned that I had found someone and became engaged, she sent a congratulatory card to my home, which she had hand-painted herself. I immediately threw away this postcard. Additionally, I learned that her new partner had recently been diagnosed with MS. I doubt that Ellie would have stayed and changed her mind about caring for a man 10 years older than her, who was struggling with neurological problems. In August 2020, I met my now wife, who's truly spectacular. She had recently left a bad marriage with a man who acted like Ella. As I was conversing with a friend about my desire for a normal partner, she overheard and we exchanged a knowing glance. That's when things took off. We tied the knot last September after 2 years of dating. And here's the amazing part. We've never had a single fight in the past year. We mutually love and care for each other and communicate every day. Our conversations are always lovely. It's hard to put into words, but she's made my life so much better. Reflecting back on half of my life, I can't help but question why I endured so much for so long, given how effortless it was to find someone so perfect afterwards. For those who have persevered until this point and are suffering in a toxic relationship, I empathize with you. I believe many of us can understand this ordeal. You tolerate things that you once thought were unacceptable. You convince yourself that the person you've invested so much time and energy into couldn't deliberately hurt you. You find yourself justifying their actions, even if it means you're being mistreated. But trust me, it's not worth it. Don't allow yourself to be taken for granted. It's better to leave because once cheating occurs, it's likely to happen again. You deserve more, so don't hesitate to leave to mitigate losses and do what you know is right for you. My hesitation towards divorce, coupled with low self-worth, compelled me to stay longer than I should have. Nothing in the relationship that ensued after I became aware helped me grow or feel better. The only individual capable of improving your mental state is yourself. Invest your energy and time in yourself and the people who truly care for you. Things will improve once you depart the toxic relationship.